applying for the lottery. So that increases your chances of getting on the river. But now that we've all been down the river, we have 1 point. So when we apply for the lottery now, we have less chance of getting on the water. But if you have a bunch of friends go in on one date, you have higher chance of someone in that group getting that permit, and then y'all can all go in together. So permit parties are where it's at.
Good. Emma, how do you know SK?
We met, oh gosh, I don't even remember the year now, but at the Nantahala Outdoor Center through the youth paddling team.
And Cheyenne, how do you know Emma and SK?
SK and I worked together on the Ocoee River, and Emma and I actually met on this trip. So,
oh,
new
so
friends,
that's
old faces.
So yeah, we didn't all know each other going into this.
No, absolutely not.
Or I knew everyone. But
Yes, but you are the group leader, so that makes it more important.
yeah.
SK, tell us a little bit about your responsibility. I mean, I know you walked us through the permit, but tell us about what you did in those 20 months to sort of prep and plan.
I don't even know where to start. So for us, we're semi self-support, like we're supporting ourselves going down the river. But I reached out to an outfitter in Flagstaff, Saba Outfitters, and they helped us do a meal plan. We rented our rafts, the rigs, the coolers, everything from them. Basically, we brought our personal gear that we're going to wear and our camping materials, but Saba packed our kitchen, everything, and they had a checklist of, I even have it right here. They made little maps for us of like, this boat's going to have this produce and this boat's going to have this meat. And so we had a chart of where our stuff is. We knew what we were cooking every night. So that's how we dealt with our food and just the major portion of our gear. After that, I was really concerned about group dynamics. You want to have people who are fun and you want to be around for a month, but you also want friends that are going to work hard and, you know, be part of the team and make an effort. So that was kind of difficult picking and choosing because I have a lot of friends I love them dearly, but I don't think I can spend 3 weeks with them in the middle of a ditch. So that was one thing that was kind of hard. We had to pay permit fees. It's $110 a person to the Park Service once you win your lottery. So collecting that from people in time can be kind of stressful, getting money from people here and there, making deadlines. But after that, it was kind of just getting out to people saying, this is the date we need to be out there. This is the gear you need. Let's rally. See you in Flagstaff. And that's kind of the quick gist of how it started to plan.
Emma, what were you, so when SK reached out to you, I mean, how long did you take before you were a full-on, you know, I'm in it to win it?
Well, when she asked, December 2020 sounded very far away. So yeah. I was like, sure, that sounds great. That's like the trip that everybody wants to go on. And I said I was in. And then this past year has just been riddled with uncertainty. And so I actually ended up bailing this past summer, and I got my $100 deposit refunded. And then the next day I was like, no way. And I went and repaid my $100 deposit. And so I didn't commit until it was probably August or September.
Yeah.
So.
What about you, Cheyenne? What were your thoughts when you first were approached by SK and this whole possible adventure?
Yeah, well, I guess the biggest thing is that I had just gotten off of the canyon last year. I guess that's actually not true. So I went on a canyon trip in 2020 as well as this year, 2021. And when I found out that I was invited on both trips, SK's trip was the second one, and I kept being real cagey for a while, like maybe. And then finally, I think to SK's great surprise, I just paid all, $1,000+ and committed to going.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, this is not $110. Let's be clear. The $110 is a permit fee to the park system. But there's much more involved than just $110. Cheyenne, talk us through that a little bit about, I mean, you're going back to back, so the money that you earn doing whatever you do is important, but how much are we talking for back-to-back trips for you, a monetary value?
Well, I do think that going on 2 back-to-back trips really lessens the cost of the second trip. For that first trip, I want to say, you know, buying all of the gear and doing everything we needed to do is probably ultimately, you know, about $1,500 for the food and for the outfitting. And then maybe another $1,500 for, you know, like some really solid, reliable waterproof bags.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a dry suit, you know, that kind of gear. And I'm from Florida, so I also had to buy winter coats for the first time in my life. So it was a big expense the first time. But this second time, I want to say it was right around $1,700 total, including transportation to get to Flagstaff.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend doing 2 trips back to back.
Yeah. When you come to that gear part, I mean, obviously some of you rent gear, some of you buy gear, and I talked a little bit about SK or with SK about the differences, but Emma, what are your thoughts on, you know, having this gear and whether you buy it or rent it or, you know, all the little pieces and parts of that?
Yeah, I needed to buy a lot of gear because this was my first trip. So I bought a lot of dry bags and winter layers. And I do think that going on a winter trip requires a lot more gear than a warm weather trip. I did end up renting a dry suit, and I think that it's a good option for some people. Like it was, I think the rental might have ended up being $300 total for the entire time that we were gone. But they don't rent women's specific dry suits on the Grand Canyon because there's a lot of issues with the sand and the zippers. And so that created a whole.
First of all, tell us a little bit, what's the difference between a women's specific and a non-women's specific dry suit?
So it's all in like where the zippers are located and
Sure.
how you can use the bathroom. And that created a world of problems for me on this trip. The rental company just was like, we're going to send you a men's dry suit and a pee funnel and it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And the pee funnel, like, it takes a lot of practice that I didn't do. And it's just really hard. And so I ended up unsuiting every time I had to use the bathroom. And it was just really, really inconvenient. So next time I'm buying my own women's specific dry suit.
Sure. And for some of you out there that don't understand what a dry suit is, there are different levels of protective clothing. There are neoprene suits that are wet suits, and then there are these dry suits. Imagine, and I'll let you explain this, but I used to wear dry suits every day. I was a rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard, and so I had several different dry suits that were different material, and then of course, I had different layers that I would need to wear depending on where we were in Alaska or Cape Cod. I always imagine a dry suit has boots, and then it has these rubber gaskets around your neck and your wrists. And so when you put them on and you put it on, it becomes an airtight vessel around your body, meaning gases, sweat, odors, everything is trapped inside of this bag. And so, you put it on and it's very cumbersome. And then it's very restricting. It feels like you're being choked. It feels like your wrists are being sawed off by rubber devils. And then you have to purge, right? You grab your neck and you squeeze this down and it becomes an airtight. I also think I think it's important to know that dry suits are not warm. What you wear underneath keeps you somewhat warmer, but the dry suit is simply to protect you from getting wet. And I can imagine having to go to the restroom or having to do movement all the time. There's consistent chafing and consistent getting in and out of that suit is not something that you want to do because it's very, very, it's a process to get in and out. So I can only imagine doing that as a female over and over and having to feed there was one, getting out of the dry suit every night or out of the helicopter, that was the first thing I did. It was like ripping it off. And we had one that had waist belt, and then of course we had one that had reverse, and so yeah, it was. I can imagine that would be an interesting process of getting in and out. Did anyone else, SK or Cheyenne, did you have a female version dry suit?
I did.
Yeah, we both had the female
Drop
dry suit, and yeah, the difference is in a drop suit. So if you can imagine like an old-timey onesie, you know, that you would wear to an outhouse, for anyone who hasn't like gotten the difference, the females has a drop seat, which is literally a zipper that goes from one knee around your backside to the other knee, that you can literally fold backwards, like, you know, pull your pants down, do your business. Where the men's dry suit only has that front zipper. So if you have to poop and you're a man, you also have to take your dry suit off every time. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And it's funny that we talk a lot about this, but it's a big deal. I mean, you have
if you're cold, it warms you up a little bit. I mean, it is like exercise getting in and out of those.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But it is a process, and I can only imagine that. We're going to share some images here in just a minute. But I kind of like to talk to you about, you know, I've not been to the Grand Canyon, certainly on my list of things to do. And I've even told SK the next time she, or, you know, hears about someone needed, I can definitely help in any way possible. But walk us through that emotional preparedness that you would probably need to undergo to get ready for an expedition like this. Emma, this was your first time down the Grand Canyon. SK, this was your first time.
Yeah.
And Cheyenne, this is your second time. So how many of your groups, or how many others in your group was it their second time?
So we had a couple people who had gone previously. One of the guys, Michael, had been on the canyon 3 times prior. One guy, Wyatt, had been on twice prior, and then I had been on once before.
So how important is that to be going down the Grand Canyon, having some experience of where things are and what to do?
Personally for me, I don't want to speak for everyone, but the guidebooks and the resources that are available on the Grand Canyon are so thorough that by the time you're there, you have the information. And whether you're a first-time rafter like SK or Emma, or you've been before, you really feel kind of the same way. The difference is this kind of ephemeral, like, familiarity. Like, everywhere you go, you've been before, and something about it feels really special. But in terms of the actual knowledge, you can get that from any resource. There are so many available.
Interesting. Emma?
Yeah, I, being a first timer, was really thankful that we had people on the trip who had been before. Sarah Kelly put one of those people in each boat. So every boat had somebody, or I guess every boat had somebody who at least had oar rigging experience. So that was super nice because I had never oar rigged before. And that is a whole thing to learn in itself. So I felt a lot of comfort knowing that, you know, I was in Cheyenne's boat, and it was really nice knowing that she had done this before.
Yeah, and let's talk about that just for a second. So there are different kinds of rafting that you could do. I mean, oar rigging is where you have this, in essence, you envision an oar boat. For those of you that are out there viewing, I mean, you have these 2 large oars. They're sort of grappled by the side of your canoe or of your raft, and there's this rigging that sits in there that's strapped down, and you really oar it. You can do it reverse or forward. But it does take some practice and getting used to. The oars are heavy, the raft is heavy, and then there's the other style of rafting, which is more of the downriver, down a Coe, the fun type, where you all sit, you all have a weapon in your hand, and you're all sort of paddling down the river with somebody on the back yelling at you to do this and do that. Sometimes jumping up and running around, spinning, and then jumping back in the raft, right? So that's the fun type. This is not a really, I mean, this is a craft. This is a rig that you're pushing and pulling down the river. Were you concerned, Emma, about having to be in an oar rig when you hadn't been in there before, or were you just figured it out?
I was concerned when I was the one in charge of the oars. It was really nerve-wracking because it does take a lot of getting used to. It really challenges both sides of your brain. You're just, you know, trying to figure out, okay, if I pull this way, where is the boat going to go? And the boat, you know, you need to think about that way in advance because the boat is so heavy. So I was nervous when I was in charge of the boat. I felt much better when Cheyenne was in charge of the boat, but I got used to it, and it did take a lot of getting used to. And yeah, it was really fun by the time I figured it out.
Yeah.
So.
Let's talk about scouting. I mean, some of you had been down the river. Do you remember what your current flow was, your CFFs?
I think we were like 10,000 to 14,000.
And that's cubic feet per second, so that's quite a bit of water coming through. Was it higher than normal or mid-range or about average?
Winter's higher water levels. So we had high water, which can make some stuff significantly bigger, and then other stuff it can wash it out. But I felt like it was great. It also got rid of a bunch of rocks that can sometimes be hazards. So that was nice.
Temperatures, your average daily temperatures, air temp was about what? Do you remember?
At the beginning, so our rig day, the first day before we launch, that's when we're getting our boats together, we had snow flurries out. It was snowing on us. So like close below freezing then. That night, I think it got maybe high 20s, and then the next day we launched in the 40s, and then slowly it crept into like days were probably like low 50s, and then maybe a couple nights got to freezing, but for the most part I'd say the nights were like 30s. Pretty comfortable.
Yeah. Is this for any of you, was this the coldest conditions you'd been? I mean, Cheyenne, were you concerned about being a Floridian and coming to the cold, or no?
Yeah, on both of my trips, the cold was definitely a big concern of mine. This trip was, because it was my second trip, I was able to prepare some things that maybe I hadn't considered in the same quantity the first time, like bringing a whole bunch of extra hot hands for around the campfire, to throw in my sleeping bag at night, hot hands basically everywhere, but also things that are temperature affected, like your skin cracking. I brought a whole bunch of new skin as that last barrier between me and the cold. The first time out, I was a little unprepared for the cold, so nothing will whip your butt faster than being unprepared.
Yeah. What about you, Emma? Were you nervous or concerned about the temperatures, or were you sort of used to this?
I was a little nervous because I have been on backpacking trips in the winter before where I have been miserably cold in my tent. So I was pretty nervous, but I also spent a lot of time preparing. I'm the kind of person that had an Excel spreadsheet for my packing list and was like making sure I wasn't going to forget anything. And the first day when we got to the put-in and there were snow flurries, it really made me nervous. I was like, oh no, we're going to be cold this whole trip. But really the first day or two were the coldest days of the whole trip. And after that, it got increasingly warmer. And we all got so good at layering. We kind of like could tell in the morning what the day was going to be like and whether we were going to be in full sun or not. And then you just adjust your layers accordingly. So I felt pretty prepared.
And then going back, SK, a little bit to the river trip and the logistical, going down the river. I mean, were there areas going down in this 226 miles? Were there specific areas that you had concerns about that you were definitely going to walk and scout and check?
Oh yeah, there's definitely some big guys in there that were like, yeah, we're going to scout this. There were some days towards the end that we maybe should have scouted stuff, but we were a little confident. They're just like, send it, we'll do it, it's good. And luckily it all worked out, but there's a big rapid called Crystal. You can look at Crystal Rapid on YouTube. We looked at that one. Lava Falls, that's the biggest rapid on the river. That was a definitely long scout and a very quiet scout. Like that was a little nerve-wracking, and everybody got up there and just kind of quiet and then hyping each other up. Like Emma was walking back to the trail with me, Cheyenne, and just like hyping each other up because you just want to be confident when you get on the oars. So yeah, you kind of the guidebooks will say this is a read and run, which just means read the white water as you go. But then there's some other bigger class rapids that were like, all right, let's pull over and check this out.
Was there anything that surprised you that was not guidebook ready?
Not so much. I think it was just the first few days for us who had not been on water that big. hitting these big hydraulics and pour overs and seeing how big these waves are and feeling kind of the impact when you hit those straight on. It's just getting used to that, because if you've been on the Ocoee, you go over those, it's fun, whatever, you get rocked a little bit. Here you stall out and sometimes your whole rig system buckles and then you float on. So it was just getting used to that, reading the big water and
Yeah.
noticing stuff's a lot bigger than you think.
I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some images and we'll sort of talk through these. But I pulled some of these off of, and I'm not sure who to give photo credit, so please make sure that you do that. But some of these I think are the ones that you sent us, SK, about a month or so ago that we got to review. And it's been really, actually, I'm kind of pissed that you did that, because basically all I've done for the last month that I've been looking at this is wanting to quit my job and then just go out there. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, what we're looking at here, I mean, you're going to have to sort of talk us through and what we're seeing.
I don't know where this is on the river, but
It kind of looks like toward the beginning of the trip, because that was like how cloudy and cold it was
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
couple of days.
you're right. That the weather's, that's definitely the beginning.
The rest of the trip was like blue skies. Yeah, that was probably the beginning.
So this is when I was confident. This is probably midway through the trip when I was like, I felt better on the oars. And my hat's pulled up extra high because the first day it fell over my eyes and it was almost super sketchy trying to row. Couldn't see where I was going.
This is a good shot of what a rig looks like and some of the setup that y'all have for sure.
Yeah. So I'm sitting on a cooler and that all has dry ice in it and stuff. And it's labeled like this cooler has this in it. And these are the days you want to open this cooler. To the right of me looking at this, to the right of the photo, the yellow box is like a porta box, like a quick, if you have to go number 2 in the middle of the day, you can take that. It has all the supplies you need to have a quick bathroom break. Luckily, everybody was good with their business, so we didn't have to use that. We have a white box on the right side, and that's our med kit. It's a miniature med kit, so like a quick grab, whatever you need. Every boat had one of those. And then to the left is just our ammo cans. So whatever we wanted in there for the day. If we wanted to throw some extra gloves in there, sunglasses, snacks, ammo cans were great for that. And then everything around us is just our dry bags, which have our clothes, our camping equipment, anything we want dry.
And just to remind you viewers, I mean, we're talking about 18 days, 226 miles with no resupply. So everything that you brought or everything that you need, you have to bring it with you. I can imagine it's a little bit of an overwhelming feeling to have to pack for 18 straight days. Emma, what do you think when you see this picture?
Again, it looks really cold that day. I was so nervous the first couple of days about the cold because it was gray like that, but also just, I mean, I think this picture kind of shows the scale of how small you are in the canyon.
There's a few more as we get through here too, which just it shows this significant size difference between what a raptor is and of course the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm. And also I love this picture because it shows like a lot of the time we were in the shadow because the winter sun, there's a lower angle. And so there were sections where we'd be in shadow like this and then you round a bend and be in full sunshine and it just felt amazing.
Mm-hmm. Here's one of those coming around the corner when you get that sun. Yeah.
This is the Scout from House Rapid, right? No, not House. Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our first Scout of the whole trip, and I guess it was like day 3, maybe. So everybody was super hyped, especially because this was like our first big rapid. I think on the Grand Canyon we do class 1 through 10, and this was a class 7. So we were super hyped. Our friend James Hunter, he took these photos. I remember looking up at him when he took these photos.
Hey, SK, what size were the boats that y'all were on?
I think we were 18 feet.
It's Isaac King, by the way.
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so we were 18-foot boats. And yeah, we were already, you see the first boat, that boat is actually already angling up for a rapid that's 200 yards away. You're already having to set your direction and figuring out your angle that much in advance.
I noticed that we didn't have a lot of pictures of going through rapids. Was there a reason, or was it just because it was so intense you just didn't really think about taking photos and more worried about getting down? Or
You just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be there, be present fully. So you just kind of lose interest in taking photos.
that's very interesting.
Some of it too is we only had a couple cameras, SK being one of them, and when we would get up to these big rapids, invariably the people with the cameras would be the people who were doing stuff, you know, like kayaking, or in SK's case, you know, like actually on the oars. So by the time we got to a point where pictures could be taken, everyone was so in the zone. And this picture that you guys are looking at is a product of me about 5 feet behind the cameraman saying, James, come on, everyone's back at the boats, we need to go. So this picture is actually fully a product of stubbornness and nothing more.
We only had 4 boats, so we all ran everything pretty close together so that we could all be near.
Yeah, in this instance, for safety, we ran in groups of 2 because James stayed back to take photos. So that was just a big thing with safety, go with groups.
This is your whole crew here, I believe?
Yeah. This is looking out of Redwall Cavern, like a very iconic spot on the river.
We talked a little bit about this, and I remember listening to your podcast too that you did. But you weren't the only group on the river. Talk us through a little bit about how groups works, and, you know, some of that, you know, that cordialness that you have about being out and running up on beaches, and with larger groups, smaller groups.
So in the wintertime, you're only allowed 1 launch a day. So that means 1 group of people all throughout, like, I think commercial ends in September. So October on to maybe
March.
April or March. It's 1 launch a day. So the day you leave the put in, you shouldn't see anyone. You're not going to see anybody. But as you float down the river, you might start running into people, because when you win your permit, you are given the option of going anywhere between 10 days and 29 days. Is that right, Cheyenne? 29?
28, yeah.
Yeah. So because of where I am in life, I was like, all right, 18's a good amount of time. I get a good chunk on the canyon, but I don't have to quit my job to necessarily do it. So over 18 days, we kind of ran into maybe like 4 or 5 groups. And as we came up to groups days, we'd say, hey, how are you guys? What day did y'all put in? You know, make the same small talk, kind of ask the same questions. And then you kind of ease into it, like, so where y'all camping tonight? And you'll talk about it. Like, we really wanted to go to Nankoweap, which is an iconic camp, for a layover day. And a layover day means you stay at camp, you don't get on the water at all, you just recover and hang out. And this layover day would also be on New Year's, so we would be there for the first day of 2021. So we were really big into groups, like, hey, we're here for this many days and we really want to be at Nankoweap on this day, and groups would say, oh, that's cool, we're staying there tomorrow and not on New Year's, or whatever. And then sometimes you'd come up on your camp and people were there, and if it's a big enough camp, you can go over and say, hey, do you mind if we stay at the other end of the beach? Or you just say, you know what, whatever, first come, first serve, let's keep rolling and see what comes up next. And your guidebook's really detailed about that too. It'll tell you the camps, it'll tell you if it has winter sunlight, it'll tell you the size, everything. So when you kind of start your day, I would just say, all right, here's camp A, B, C, D, all the options if you ever came up to camp and someone was there. But the rules are everyone in your party has to be on that beach technically to claim the campsite. But you also don't want to be a jerk when there's like 5 people at the camp and they're waiting on their one friend to kayak, and you're all like, well, we're here first, so we're taking it. I'm a big believer in river karma, so you kind of just have to talk to people, be nice, courteous, and it all worked out for us.
And you do really, like, a lot of it starts to become like friendships. I mean, there was a couple groups that we saw a bunch. Some did actually have people we knew, but by the end of the river, you know, the people that you hike with one day, you see the next couple days on the river, and it just becomes kind of friendly. Here, in particular, at Redwall Cavern, we saw a group that we never saw again. They were these like magical canyon people.
It was
who,
a
as
boy party. Big
Yeah, it
old-
was.
Yeah.
It was a group of people who were just, they were all ready to party. I mean, like in onesies and bright colors. And as we
There
were
was a guy in like full glitter, silver glitter shirt, and he just looked like a disco ball beaming on the beach. And we get, this is all we can see for like a quarter of a mile. 'Cause it's like, that's how far we can see the cavern from there.
And as we were pulling out, I mean, just that the whole group just had such a goofy spirit. They marched out like high school marching band style, and about faced and mooned us all. So
It's a
So
good
there's definitely the whole what happens on the river stays on the river concept here, I would imagine.
Oh,
Yeah, there's no social norms. You kind of just get to be your true self, let it all out.
A lot of mooning.
Oh,
Yeah. It's kind of a greeting.
yes, yes. We got some more pictures here just showing some of maybe getting ready.
Hey, Emma, you have a comment on this picture.
Yeah, this was a lunch stop and a pee stop. And because I have to take off my dry suit to use the restroom, I went around the island to pee. And you also cannot use the bathroom on land at all. So if you're peeing, it needs to go into the water. And so I was squatting over in the water, and my ankles sank into the sand, and I completely fell over with my dry suit open. All my dry layers got wet. That was like day 3 or 4. So it was great.
At least it was a warm, sunny day.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It is, when I look at these pictures, it is interesting to see how, I mean, I would imagine that your daylight and your sunshine is limited on what you can get, where you can get it.
Yeah, you definitely have to think about that. And like they gave us a chart kind of like of sunset and everything we should expect, but we were kind of at camp every day by 3, 4 at the latest. That way you have plenty of time in the daylight, set up, chill out. You're not rushed to get dinner ready.
Here's a pretty good wave size though, a picture of a wave and the size of it.
That's also House Rapid, I think,
Yes.
from the first scouting picture.
Yeah, so we're getting pushed all the way river left, and there's a huge wave that can flip your boat. Definitely a couple of our boats got really good hits here. But yeah, that was like the first taste of what we were going to be doing for the next 2 weeks.
So House Rapid is one of the first large ones that you come across. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially, it says, welcome to the house.
Yeah.
I love this photo too, and it was hard for me to stay focused working one day when I was watching it. It's just really vivid with the colors and the water, and there's just a lot of energy here with the sun coming over. And yeah, I mean, when you look at these pictures when you've gone through them, I mean, does it bring you back to some of these places and the memories you have and then spot on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I go through my pictures a lot.
Yeah. Well, you kind of can look at particular spots and know exactly how you felt.
Mhm.
Like there are some spots, I remember I was mad one day and I was like, see this picture? I was really mad when I took this picture, but nobody knows. It's just a landscape photo.
For sure.
But that's kind of, you look through everything and you're like, oh, this is the day this happened and that was funny. And yeah, it's amazing. I love the photos.
It's interesting how powerful imagery is. Have any of you printed any of these pictures that you've taken and done anything with them?
I made a coffee table book.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Diane?
I haven't printed any. I actually didn't take any pictures on our trip with a digital camera. I brought one of those like the like Instax, the like new Polaroid. And all the pictures that I took on the canyon from this trip were all Polaroid images. So I've got them kind of like collected in a little bound.
And those are like coveted photos too, because you can't post them online and everybody would look at them and they're like, that's an awesome photo. Can I have it? And Cheyenne's like, nope, these are all mine.
I was a little selfish with it.
What about you,
Okay.
Emma? What do you do with your images?
I have a couple that I would love to print. I actually didn't take any of these either. I didn't bring a camera, and I had my phone, but it was like hardly ever charged or on. So we had like, I think 3 people that had nice cameras, and I was so thankful that they were documenting the trip, because I'm so thankful for these pictures. But it was also, on the flip side of that, really nice to not be attached to a phone or a camera to like, oh, I got to capture this, I got to capture that. It was fully present, you know, in the moment.
It's interesting, for our outdoor programs that we do, we actually require students to turn in their phones on the day that we arrive at the location. And it's always been sort of a, you know, a flip of a coin about what students will feel when they have to relinquish that cell phone. But I also promise them, and Taylor can attest to this, she's our graduate assistant, and she's been really good about documenting some of these things. But we usually will take anywhere between 6 and 1,000 images, depending on what trip we're doing. And then Taylor will, you know, take video, and she has a camera, and we have GoPros, and then we'll edit these and compile them or compress them into sort of, you know, a short hype video for students afterward. And we've received the same comments too. And I like the comment that you made earlier, SK, about living in that moment and not worried so much about taking the imagery of it. And I think it's interesting sometimes that you do want to have this imagery because you do want to remember, but you also want to be in the moment of these expeditions and not have to worry about, you know, because imagery is very tricky. I mean, let's be honest, you've got to stage and you've got to get to the spot and you've got to hone in and focus, and it does take you away from the moment. I've noticed that as a program director for the last 13 years, that when you switch that gear and transcend and become a leader and become a documenter for others, it's an interesting pill to swallow sometimes. Now, I've also been hanging off a rope at the edge of a cliff, you know, taking photos, and then I've slipped, and I've certainly been brought right back to, you know, that moment that, oh yeah, I'm still tied to a rope. But it is interesting, and images are so powerful. I sometimes think that they're under talked about and sort of under, you know, represented in the sense of what they can do, especially when it's you in the images and it's you doing the work. But your images are just very great. And so whomever took those, definitely make sure you thank them. Like SK with this
Selfies, lots of selfies.
This must have been a camp spot.
Yeah, this is Tanner's camp, and we were all really happy because it was sunny, the whole camp covered in sun. Now you can tell it's sunset. We started to put layers on, but
even with the high water, it seems as though you had good opportunities to find sandy beaches still.
Yeah, definitely some good spots. We were on our way actually to see some petroglyphs right behind us on that little rocky section about a quarter of a mile from camp. There were some cool petroglyphs.
So Tanner Camp isn't a small sandy beach. It's a massive like debris fan that no longer floods. So it's a huge sandy wash where you can hike up around, and where SK is pointing to, these like rocks on the back, there are some old like remnants of like housing. I don't.
Yeah, they're old, like, I guess
ruins from old civilizations that were up on top.
I can't come up with the word. Foundation.
Yeah,
foundations. Yeah.
But it was very casual because, you know, this is very few people make it out to this section of the river. So there's not a sign out there for tourists saying like, go look at this or keep off the rocks. We were just walking, and then I looked to the side and I was like, are those swirls on that rock? Like, I almost walked by it. So it's really cool to see how well preserved it is and how many people respect it. So that was really special.
This is definitely a nice sunny day for sure.
Yeah, this is from Redwall. You can see a lot of rafts. Those are all 4 of our rafts on the beach. And then just out of frame on the far right, those are the other people we ran into. So, and this isn't even all the rafts that were there pictured. So you can see there's a lot of people at one point.
Is this Emma? Emma, is this you?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is with your front
Yes.
little
It was very useless for me.
Oh, you can look at Cheyenne's
I was gonna say,
behind.
yeah,
Yeah.
to the right of Emma, that beautiful gray blob is me, and that is the black band is the drop
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. I mean, if you look down at your raft and you look at the gal, it looks like she's a gal in the teal. She's
Yeah.
tiny compared to what the size of that raft is. I mean, we're not talking about a Koi raft. We're talking about large scale rafts here.
They're huge. And we only had 3 people per raft. And that was kind of like as many as you wanted. It got
Sure.
crowded after that.
Well, especially once you pack all your gear and equipment, it's not room for much other than just 2 people or 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
is
river,
towards the
on river
end.
pics, it sounds like, or looks like.
Yeah, I was on the river. This is it looks like nobody's rowing. I guess it was a flat section. Cheyenne's got her lunch for the day. James, I think, was napping in the back.
Yeah, Emma's definitely rowing because she has the oars pushed down. You can kind of see
yeah.
her.
But this is like, it's just fun. You the flat water sections, you just get to have fellowship and joke around with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
Yeah.
chit chat, a lot of deep conversations.
James took this photo. I love this photo.
How important is it though to plan what you're going to do for the day, and how much effort goes into that? How much discussion do you have the night before, or do you pretty much have everything planned exactly how you're going to do it?
I made like a rough schedule by day 4, I'd like to be at this point. Did we stick to that schedule? No, but
Mostly.
mostly it was just kind of giving me an idea, like these checkpoints. So it's not a day before we have to take off and it's like, oh, we have to paddle 20 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Basically either it would be that evening or early the next morning. I would just open up our guidebook and kind of look at, all right, this is the things we want to hit up today, the hikes we want to do. And you can look and see how much of it's flat water, how many of it are rapids, are they big rapids? And you can kind of make your game plan for the day because you kind of figure out, we're going to spend this long scouting this rapid. If it's a big flat water day, we might push so we can get to a cool camp. So we kind of made our decisions in the evenings or early in the morning, but we would average about 10 to 15 miles a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a really beautiful picture, and it's interesting too. Right down the center of that river is your divide line with the sun and the shade.
Yeah,
This is
we definitely, if we could be in the sun, we always paddled in the sun.
Yeah. This is a really good overview too of what your raft in the whole setup looks like. I appreciate this picture.
Yeah, this
And
is another one from James.
the color of the water too. I love this picture.
The whole trip, the water was like that. I expected it to be muddy and chocolatey and brown, but it's beautiful and emerald the whole
Mhm.
time.
In terms of the boat setup specifically, you can see that we as like a river community have really smartly engineered these boats to have all of this luggage in the back. That's everything. That's clothes, booze. You see a kayak there. And then in the front, this front section's entirely open, and that's where you sit. That's where you're actually at for most of the day. And all of the Paco pads for sleeping are usually up there. At least they were for all of our boats. So it's a real cozy place to. Yeah, they're waterproof. It's a really cozy place to take a nap and eat your lunch and sit for 10 miles.
Talk us through a little bit why bringing a kayak was important, or why did you bring a kayak? Did every raft have a kayak?
No.
3 people brought kayaks on our trip. And it was mainly
kayakers that wanted to get out and run some stuff in a kayak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did any of the females kayak?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, none of us are, none of the 4 of us are kayakers. But more than that, all of the 4 of us are warm weather ladies. So none of us were going to risk the cold water. We did have a ducky with us, so we're able to paddle.
Yeah, ducky's an inflatable kayak for anyone who doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But we use that more for a couch on the beach and not so much on the river.
Was did the kayakers, did they go through a majority of the rapids in the kayak, or selective rapids, or?
It's like half and half.
Yeah, they would just kind of like, if they felt like kayaking, they'd get in, and if they knew that some rapids were coming up that they wanted to paddle, they would go, they would scout with us and then decide like, I want to run this in the kayak. And then
Sure.
they got cold and jumped back in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and all three of them mentioned, at different parts that being on the raft was in some ways like scarier or maybe
Yeah.
more exciting than having control of their kayak for like maneuverability reasons. And also just at least one of them would say that some of the waves were so big on the canyon that in a raft, you really felt like something was happening and you had to work for it. And in a kayak, you just get thrown over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they all preferred the rafts.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. And we don't have too many more pictures, but I did find some pictures that showed your camp set up a little bit.
These are great, Cheyenne.
Yeah, that's me eating a bagel.
Well, you got to
Classy.
eat, right?
Yeah. So in the background, you can kind of see our little kitchen setup. Anything with a tablecloth, that's where we'll serve our food. The blue bottle is in duct tape because it was a glass Bailey's bottle, but we had that every morning to go with our coffee.
To keep you warm, right? Warm you up.
Yeah, exactly. It's all for survival. And
I
then
al-
you
I
kind of see our
noticed them-
kitchen buckets and stuff.
I was noticing how important it was to have the ammo cans because they are really watertight and durable, like in,
Mhm.
against dry bags and other things. It was funny how ammo cans have turned into be something that we use for this recreation and leisure when it really was used for ammunition, so it's funny.
Yeah, this is TMI, but we went to the bathroom in an ammo can the whole time. That was
Fantastic.
our situation for that.
That's the right amount of information, SK. Not too much.
No, please try them out.
Go on the can and
RMI.
figure out much more.
This is a great shot too, just sort of setting or showing in, what your camp would look like and how.
This is New Year's Day. New Year's Day. Mike G's on the right. Michael, he's painting.
We had just my brother was on the trip as well, and he had a satellite inReach device, and so you can text. And so we texted our parents Happy New Year's, and my mom gave the weather report for the rest of the trip that said sunshine and warmer temps, and we were just so excited basking in the sun on this day.
What's it like to be disconnected like that? If you didn't have the inReach, what was it like to be disconnected really from culture and society for 18 straight days?
Amazing.
I mean, you can't think about anything except your immediate environment. Like, yeah, you can reflect on your life and what you want to do, but you're not worried about work. You're really not missing anyone at home. You're just enjoying everything right there in the moment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that you were on this during the July 6th insurrection of the Capitol, so none of you had any idea what was happening?
Well, so actually, kind of crazy. I think in a normal situation, no, you wouldn't have known what was happening. But we had so many groups on the river, and some had different, communication capabilities, different inReaches, whatever. We passed a group, maybe right around that day, maybe a couple days later, and they said, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" And "Oh, hey, how are you guys doing?" And they said, "They're doing great. The Democrats took the House and the Republicans stormed the Capitol." And then that was it. We never saw those people again. So
Wait, way to just kind of mind warp you a little bit for a couple of days, huh?
But honestly, we heard that, and then it was just like a passing thought. We were like, well, we have no way of getting more information and nothing to do about it. So
it doesn't affect us
it
right
just
now.
left your brain almost as quickly as it came in. It was amazing.
all right, well, those two non-anxious brains had that experience. I spent maybe the rest of the day being like, did they mean that? Like, was that a joke? Was that a weird joke? Is that really what happened? Because that feels worse.
What an interesting, but that's a funny thought that you have, and what an interesting dynamic that might have put people in, because here you've been for however many days, right?
Yeah.
So disconnected from anything. And what a shame, kind of, right? To ruin that for you. It's almost like you need to have a sign or a billboard or a banner on your raft that says, "Don't effing say anything to me about anything out there in the world."
Yeah.
And I don't want to steal it in your story, but SK and I and my father and a group were on the Rio Grande and Boquillas Canyon during March when the pandemic hit, and we had no idea. My cell phone and things of that nature were all stuck in a dry bag, and I mean I used it here and there, but we we got off the river in La Linda, Mexico, on the border, and we ran up to a store to get some ice cream. And my dad had his phone, and they had Wi-Fi there, and that's when we found out essentially that the university had shut down, that the world had shut down, and we, it was really strange. And I felt bad for some of our students and for us as a whole, as a group, because it ruins that dynamic. The minute you touch back into society and you learn sort of about what's happening, it really does steal. It's a shame, so I feel for you. But it is a weird thing.
I thought that the day that we got off the water was the hardest, because we got to the takeout at 10 a.m. and the ladies that picked us up, weren't saying anything about the news, and somebody mentioned like the stimulus check or something, and they were like, well,
I was like, did we get a check?
Yeah. And they were like, well, we've been waiting. Do you want to hear what happened? And we were like, oh, I guess.
It was like 50-50. Half the group was like, no.
They unloaded. Like, I was so overwhelmed with information and like emotion, and didn't want to talk about it anymore. And like the whole van ride back to Flagstaff was just like, I don't want to see what's on my phone.
And I feel like days after the trip, like the following week, I didn't really want to talk to people who weren't on that trip. It was just like I was communicating with y'all because I didn't want to know anything about the outside world. It was kind of a stressor.
There's my professor when I was in grad school at University of Idaho, his name is Dr. Mike Kinzinger. And he, really the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, but he lives in a small cabin with his wife outside of Moscow, Idaho, out in the woods. He's very self-reliant, but he also is a solo canoe tripper, and he's got some Guinness World Book of Records. But he typically every year has taken a solo trip to the Boundary Waters. And in some cases, he'll spend between 60 and 90 days alone in a canoe. In fact, he's written a book. It's called Alone in a Canoe, if you get a chance to look at that and read it. It's actually a great read. He's very much like you, Emma. He's very extreme to the organization where he will weigh himself before, and then he will weigh himself after. He will also keep a detailed journal entries every day about what he's experienced, his emotions. He's also very research-based, so he somehow ties it back into education, or somehow ties it back into this socio, normalcy. But his stories are really are fascinating, and if you ever get a chance to read it, that Alone in a Canoe book, it's just really invigorating. But one of the things he talks about at the end is his fear of coming back. I mean, he's survived for 90 days, and in some cases he's wondering, like, if I can do it for 90, what's 180? If I can do it for 100, so he does have these really vivid conversations with readers about, and he's got a wife. So in essence, he has to come back. But he also talks about how when he does come back and he gets on this train, literally he has to take a train and throw his canoe in the back of a cargo train and ride back to his Subaru. And he's alone in his Subaru just weeping. Because the radio, or sometimes he can't listen to the radio for days, sometimes he can't speak to people for days. There's this transition that unless you've really gone through it, this transcending transition of leaving what you've known and what really has significantly impacted you, to come back to things that don't necessarily mean as much. I mean, people do, but you do transition back into getting back into your normal, quote unquote, routine, and your availability to seize technology and have things instantaneously. There's a weird sensation about that. But I can understand, I feel sorry for you all, for you three. And I'm assuming that probably some of you others were in the same way about really questioning the things that you do. With that note, I'll start with you, Cheyenne. What things have changed in your life because of doing these types of things that you do?
Well, I guess kind of a lot has changed, but the foremost for me is kind of adjusting my view of my future to include things that allow me to keep doing this. So I have this degree in biology, and I worked in animal care for several years. It's a very strict job. You work most holidays, and when I went on that first canyon trip, I mean, I never wanted to have a job again. I just wanted to go and hang out on the rivers all the time. But then I started looking at my options and where my degree can take me that allows me to have a month off at a time to go down the canyon or to hike, somewhere remotely in Alaska. Any of these things, I want to build a life that is about them, that has a means and a method to get there. So that was the biggest thing that changed for me. It's really putting my nose to the grindstone and figuring out how I could just do this all the time. And I am actually right now going back to school. So I made moves.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. And I tell my students a lot too, it's about whether you work to live or you live to work. And you've got to find that balance, certainly to incorporate things that you want to do that make you happy. And it's really hard sometimes though to convince young adults that this type of lifestyle or these types of things are doable. But at the same time, I always get a lot of pushback from students that want to say, well, why would I want to go do that? Why do I want to go? And when I'm looking at this photo right now, why do I want to go shit in a bucket? Why do I want to go eat out of a cooler every day? And I can understand that, but until you've really done it because you want to do it, and it's something that you do with others that also appreciate the value of what you're doing, it is really hard to convince people, certainly young people today, to give up their phone and to give up that instant connectivity to things, to go out and literally live in the sand and dirt. So it is interesting. I'm also fascinated with you three because you're very strong, intelligent women that choose to do this, and that's quite an anomaly in some cases in today's world. I mean, I think that. Emma, what are some things that maybe this type of lifestyle has and these types of adventures have done for you in a positive way that maybe have changed or shifted things that you think about?
Yeah, I think that I would definitely echo what Cheyenne said. It has put into the forefront of my brain, how can I make this possible for the rest of my life? Whether it's a canyon trip or whether it's just a weekend overnight canoe trip, just making that a priority in my life. And also surrounding myself with people who also have that same priority or understand the importance of that in their life as well. Sarah Kelly planned a trip next weekend, so we're all going to hopefully meet up and hang out on the river next weekend. But that has been, and making sure that I have a job that allows me to prioritize that, like she said as well. I had another thought, but it left my brain. But that was, and I think that the thing that took me by surprise the most was just, I don't know if I've ever been more present in my entire life, ever. And that was probably the most life-changing thing about this trip for me. And I think about that a lot, in just day-to-day life. How can I be more present?
SK?
For me, after this
In my
trip,
normal-
I was just extremely not overconfident, but my confidence had grown immensely. I'd never been a trip leader. I'd never done whitewater this big. So my confidence in actually planning something like this, being a leader, making decisions, and just running water this big, that grew a lot. But also I just was very fulfilled every day. Right now, I have a job that sometimes I get all my work done in just a couple hours, and then I sit in front of a computer for 5 hours. And that's just so unfulfilling. But when you're in the canyon, you make your own shelter, in the sense you're building you're putting your tent together. You're making your food. You are doing everything because y'all are self-sufficient out there. You're surviving, and just working with everybody. That's just fulfilling, knowing that we're doing this, we put in the effort, and you're proud of yourself at the end. Because it's not a walk in the park. It's a beautiful place. It's so much fun, but you're going to have to put in a lot of effort to survive the whole trip.
What, of the trip, what was the most difficult thing for you, but also what was the most, in your mind, what was the most rewarding thing? Sarah Kelly.
I can see Cheyenne's excited. The most difficult, kind of just sometimes it's hard to just like make a decision because you're like, oh, will they be mad at me if I choose this? What will they think if I do that? And some days I'd say, here's option A, here's option B, all in favor of this, all in favor of that. And that's how we'd make plans. But yeah, it was kind of hard moving into that leadership position of this is how it's going to work today. The best part about it is just we all walked away with this special experience that only the 12 of us can share with each other. And it's, I don't know, it's just a great connection between all of us. And I love it. It makes me happy thinking about all of us getting together again.
I'm gonna segue with you just for a second, because one of the things that we are doing at the university level is we are doing some research on not only group dynamic and skill acquisition as a female, but that leadership element as a female. When you put all females together and you send them on an adventure, there's an interesting dynamic there sometimes. And SK, you bear witness to that. And when we sent the group down to the Rio Grande, and there were some elements that made the difference between the Grand Canyon trip that we did backpacking and the canoeing trip down the Rio Grande. And I'm not going to get into great details about the differences. However, there were differences in the way that women reacted to strong women that were educated, and certainly these different biases that we sometimes speak about, whether it be whatever. But how did that work for you to be on the canyon as a female leader who had not been down the canyon before, working with men and other women? For
me, I had an amazing group. I knew everybody on this trip except one person starting the trip. So I had a good group of friends. From the guys, I knew they weren't gonna mansplain me. And I also felt comfortable with this group saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Can we discuss it? Or other things like that. And then with the girls, we were just a big powwow party of, you're doing awesome. That was a sweet run. You got this. You're strong. I mean, everybody just had an immense amount of trust in each other. That was
how important was it for you to be that person to speak those things and have that narrative? Do you think it was important, or was it something that you did?
I think it was a huge part. There was one point in the trip where it was a bigger rapid, and I could feel some hesitancy from my boat, and that really affected my mood. But then Cheyenne and Emma were there, and they were like, you've been kicking ass. You got this. You can do it. Ran the rapid. It was great. After I ran the rapid, I kind of was like to my crew, I was like, I didn't really appreciate like the lack of support back there. So you do have to communicate that thing. And it was handled. It was like, sorry, we didn't know you felt that way, blah, blah, blah. And the rest of the trip, it was just very supportive. Like, do you feel good running this? You want some pointers? Mm-hmm. Oh, that was a great job. So it's just constantly a feedback loop with this group.
Some of these things were on the fly too. I'm assuming that you would get some feedback on the fly and
definitely. Mid rapid, you'd hear a shriek or a something. You'd know exactly.
And even expedition as a whole, right? Some days there would be, I'm assuming, some different kinds of conversations about how it would approach the next day or what you didn't feel comfortable. How important was it to have open, transparent conversation with your group?
Extremely important. The beginning, there were a couple bumps, realizing if you were assigned to cook breakfast, you also needed to lay out lunch because we were going to pack lunch at breakfast so we could eat it on the river. Sure. Or like there were a couple nights it got below freezing. So we would say, remember to pump out the hose in the sanitation station because if it freezes overnight, we're not going to be able to use it for a few days. So just little things here and there, maybe in the morning or in the evening when we're all eating together, we would just address that really quickly. Before the trip also, it was kind of weird because it was all my friends I was addressing. It's just kind of like, these are the expectations I have. Like, if you see something that needs to be done, let's get it done. Do your part, help each other out, kind of just lay out everything. Communication, that was the biggest thing. Talk to each other how you're feeling that day. Some days you're just in a pissy mood and
Sure.
it happens.
Cheyenne, you look like you're biting at the bit here to come have some conversation with us.
Well, yeah, two things are happening at once. I really love this conversation because it's hard sometimes to examine our own leadership skills. So speaking to SK's leadership style, she is very like egalitarian. Like, what does everyone think of this? You know, like, how can we as a group approach this? And it's funny kind of to hear her say that there was a time where she was like, no, we're doing this, because that was never what happened. It was always like, I think we should do this. What do you guys think?
Mhm.
And fortunately, her biggest advocates were probably me and Emma, who both have pretty strong personalities. And as a group, we were very persuasive. So
Yeah. In SK's mind, though, that is a dominant, she is perceiving herself to be somewhat dominant. It's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The reality
There
is,
was a particular place
Yeah.
when everybody was giving me their opinions and Bernie came up to me and was like, how about blah, blah, blah. And like, I was just like, stop talking. And like, he was the last person to come up to me. It was nothing against him. And I just like walked off, got my guidebook, looked at it for a few minutes. And then I was like, all right, here's the options. And then we made a plan. And then I remember our friend Josh going, how about if we look for something a little closer? And I was just like, no, we made a plan, Josh, get in the boat, let's go.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, and
little
yeah,
things like that, you're like, we gotta go, come on.
yeah, which is not to say you're like any less of a leader. I thought for me that was like such a type of leadership that I respond well to. It was just like, it was less like the world is on my shoulders, I'm the one in charge, get up or get out. It was always kind of like, this is our trip that I'm in charge of. So like, I want to make sure that everyone is like comfortable and like getting what they want from this, but we also like need to get here by this time. And like,
Yeah.
It was
Cheyenne
just
being on the trip, and Michael and Wyatt, they have feedback. Like, I don't know everything. They're gonna say, oh, that camp's awful, or
Mhm.
what if we didn't push this much today? So I also wanted their feedback the whole time through the trip.
Sure. Emma, what are your thoughts about the trip, and as far as like confidence and leadership and the perceived versus the, reality?
I think I agree. I really appreciated Sarah Kelly always making sure that everyone got their input, and I'm sure it was frustrating at times where everyone was voicing a different opinion. But for the most part, everybody was super good at going with the flow. We almost always agreed, it was just like a really great like dynamic of everyone there. And that was another part of like Sarah Kelly's leadership that like shined. Like, you could tell how much time she put into choosing
Mhm.
everybody to make sure that everyone, got along and just worked hard. And that was really cool to see, all of that hard work that she had put into making sure everybody was paying on time or,
Mhm.
committing. It
I
really
was
paid
really
off.
proud of the boat assignments. It seemed like every boat had 3 people in it, and every group meshed so well. It
Mhm.
was like perfect personality matchups. And we would get in other boats, but just to start the trip, I was like, oh, this came together so perfectly.
It
Like,
really-
I told Emma and Cheyenne, like, I'm gonna be so mad if y'all become better friends because they're both my best friends. And I'm like, oh man. I just
Emma,
wish
talk a
I
little
could-
bit about what your thoughts were when it did come to making decisions. Did you feel like you had just as much input as anyone else?
Yeah, I think that I definitely had as much input. I valued the input of the people that had been before
Mhm.
a lot. And so I usually always would have like deferred to, like Mike G. I recall one day there was another group that was taking the camp that we really wanted to go to. And Mike G was just like, here is what I think we should do to just like be good people. And I was like, you know what? Great. And I think that, yeah, I definitely felt like I had a voice, but I really appreciated the voices of the people who had been before.
Emma, have you been on trip with piss poor group dynamic?
Yes, I have. It's not fun.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Cheyenne? Have you been on trips? Your trip before this one, I mean, was there the group dynamic about the same, or was it different?
that, that almost feels like a loaded question. It was the same in that I loved everyone and would go down the river with them again, but it was so different in that, the personalities are different. The planning, the scheduling, like what people want to focus on, that stuff was all different. But both of my trips down the canyon have been phenomenal with excellent group dynamics. But in terms of other trips I've done, I am a trip leader here on the Ocoee. So I've definitely had small trips at a time where I've been like, this isn't my favorite. But the Grand Canyon, both times have been incredible. And
oh, good.
Yeah.
I'll have to talk to you in private because we're planning a university trip in over Labor Day to the Ocoee. So maybe we can hook up with you.
Yes, I am your girl, and I don't mean to totally shout myself out here, but if anyone wants to go rafting, the NOC Ocoee is your place, and I am your girl.
I see Judy Norton up there sharing some love. She's ready. She wants to go.
Miss Judy is also a guide on the Ocoee, and she is the first female raft guide on the Ocoee. So that is a badass piece of history you got here with you.
Wow, so we have some celebrity here with us tonight. That's fantastic. Judy, we'll have to include you in a minute. So, well, I mean, the pictures and things that you showed, and I'm going to share the video if you don't mind here in a minute, SK, that you produced for us, and let sort of. But before we do that video, I am going to open up the floor to other questions. And before I do that, I just wanted to say that I really do appreciate you, all three of you, coming and speaking tonight. It is really interesting. One of the things that we are trying to really encourage, certainly pre-pandemic, and certainly we will after, was, just making outdoor adventure accessible. And one of the things that we've noticed is that we do have a disparity in female and women, participating in the higher level of either leadership or in the national parks and recreation systems, and really systemically across the board. We don't necessarily see a disparity in participation, although we do see the disparity on how we represent those that do participate. For example, if you take rock climbing and you look at the rock climbing covers, it's typically a white woman in very, limited clothing for that appeal. And, and also when you see a rock climbing magazine, it's also a very masculine white male. We rarely see, people of color represented well in certainly the narrative, but also in just the imagery in outdoor recreation. So one of the things that certainly we are trying to do at Dub State is provide that opportunity of equality across the board and the accessibility. A couple of years ago, I had a graduate assistant who was really taken by some of the research, and she ended up doing a gender-centric study that received some really interesting attention, and we got some things published. But she was the one that really wanted to start leading these all-female, and she was a strong, skilled woman. She was a strong leader, but she didn't think that she was a strong leader. And that was, the first trip was a hike down the Grand Canyon on the Hermit Trail, which is a very difficult trail to do. And of course, they camped at Hermit's Rapid. But it was a successful trip. But the data that we got back from the surveys and also from the interviews after was really fascinating because it really echoed a lot of what you are saying tonight, was that when you provide people the opportunity to do things and to make decisions, and you provide that democratic style of strong leadership where you include and you're including, it really makes a big difference. The SK can attest that on the other trip to the Rio Grande, we had strong leaders who felt they were strong leaders and that they wanted to be heard. And that's an interesting dynamic that we had in the difference with our research, was that when you think you're a strong leader, whether you know it or not, and you do lead strongly and you have strong opinions on what and how the group dynamic should be, and you're very highly educated and you have an input, that changes the output of that expedition. And it certainly changed the output of the expedition between our Rio Grande trip and our Grand Canyon trip as a female program. We are certainly going to continue our gender studies here and sending all female programs out into the world. But we are mindful in the future about perceived expectations of group dynamic leadership. And it was really interesting to see the differences in between. So it's really fascinating to see that even you had that concept. And I even think it's interesting even more so that SK, you had the mindset and sort of the forthright to know ahead of time what your group dynamic would be and how it would affect your trip by really fully thinking through whom you would bring and where you would place them. I mean, it wasn't something that you just said, "Oh, everybody come and let's get on some rafts and go." I mean, it's very ironic of how much emphasis you placed on simply that aspect of your adventure. So it just sort of echoes what we are finding through our research, that really truly does indicate that group dynamic and the leadership styles of those groups are detrimental for the success of your expedition, whether it's a 3-day or an 18-day. So I appreciate that. With that being said, are there any last comments from you three about any of those things?
Go do big trips.
Yeah, go do big trips for sure. And be
Yeah.
strong, independent females and trust yourself. I think that's a really important thing that I really want to take away today, is that you can look like you. And you can have the same feelings and emotions of you: fear, inhibition, nervousness, but at the same time, you got to go out and do it. I think it'll make it a big difference. I'm opening the floor now to anyone that would like to have a conversation with either Cheyenne, Emma, or SK. If you would, please just sort of wait for just a split second before you all just jump at them. And then when you do voice in, just tell us a little bit for a second, who you are, where you're from, and then just ask Emma, Cheyenne, or SK, and we'll open up the floor for questions. This is always that awkward moment of who's going to ask a question. And if you don't want to ask a question, you can have the chat box where you can certainly put your questions in, and I can certainly moderate those for you. In fact, Brad Snow is here, and Brad Snow asks, did you have some amazing starry skies?
Oh yeah.
Yes. It was awesome.
Well, the beginning we had a full moon, so couldn't see all the stars, but it was an amazing moon. And then the end we had a new moon, so stars are beautiful. Milky
Judy,
Way.
I'm gonna add you in here, and I've actually pinned your video up in here. We'd like to hear a little bit about who you are, and Cheyenne has really talked you up. So give us a little bit of history about you.
Hey, Todd, I've been very impressed with your perceptive questions. You've done an awesome job. And of course, these ladies, I don't know Emma, but I know Cheyenne and Sarah Kelly really well. As Cheyenne said, I was the first female raft guide on the Ocoee. I've been a raft guide on the Ocoee for 43 years and love it. And I'm a nurse, and I said I went to nursing school so I could support my whitewater habit. So been down the canyon twice. Once as a baggage boatman for oars, and then the second time as a private trip. So it's an incredible experience, and I live vicariously through these ladies. I think they're incredible.
What is you've been on a lot of expeditions then with group dynamic. Are you am I to assume that some of the things we mentioned tonight do echo through group leaders, and about having the group dynamic really does make or break a trip? And
Oh, certainly. Some of the things that you mentioned about some of Sarah Kelly's strengths, I can echo that it's important to be democratic, but not weak. Mm-hmm. Sometimes folks think if you're democratic, you can be run over. And it's like, no, I want everyone to have an input. I'm not authoritarian. And there's a fine balance in how that is perceived. Mm-hmm. And so I think Sarah Kelly walked a fine line, but it sounds like she did an awesome job.
Yeah, I have to tell students a lot of times too, and you've probably heard the saying before, but don't mistake my weakness, or don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I think that's important though. And I do appreciate and value what SK was saying earlier about setting those expectations at the beginning. Because I think once you're in the trip and you have these things that even routinely come up within the expedition, it's really hard to rein them back and to change and switch gears midway through an expedition, especially for something this long and this organized and this complicated to deal with, where you have no out and there's just this winding flow of water that you have to get down. So it's pretty interesting.
And I liked what Emma said, was that there was someone with skill or with previous experience in each boat. And I think that lends to your trust, and you've got to have confidence in the folks you're entrusting your life to. So that group dynamics of building confidence and trust in each other and ourselves is huge, whoever we are.
Well, and I'm sorry, Judy, I'm sorry, ladies, but Judy's stealing show here. Judy, I'm just really interested in so you've been, I mean, in the 70s, perhaps, right? That you were on the
Right.
rivers?
Yeah.
Before perhaps the Chattooga was flowing and going? Was that one of the national wild and scenic rivers because it was like 74, 73?
I think the Chattooga's been around for years. I think it just celebrated its 50th anniversary. So, in fact, a good friend of ours took Jimmy Carter down the Chattooga, and that's how it became a wild and scenic river, was because of a good friend of ours took him down the river, and Jimmy was like, "Oh, we need to do something about this."
Yeah, wasn't he a governor or senator of Georgia at the time?
The governor at the time of Georgia.
Yeah, there's an iconic photo, and I have it in my office, or in our lab, actually, pictured of him. We used to work with NOC to go down the Chattooga as a university group in the 70s with Dave Heflin. His son, Land Heflin, that graduated from Dove State, is a world-known kayaker and lives in Missoula, Montana, and runs Tarkio Expeditions. But Dave Heflin is the professorship that I fulfill here. And he was the one that started taking students from Dove State to not only Nantahala, but also the Ocoee and the Chattooga. And I believe his name was Dave Winters, was the outpost guide and outpost director at the Chattooga River when we would go. We started going for different reasons to just different vendors, and we ended up working with Wild Waters on the Ocoee. But when we go on the Chattooga, but when we do go to the Ocoee, we work with OAR, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Ocoee Adventures. And the only reason we would go there was because they allowed us to camp on site at their location. And also we had a former co-worker at the University of Southern Mississippi who used to guide there, and we would partner sometimes with the USM's program. And I think Robbie, who's still here, had gone and brought some students before too. So it was an interesting river to be on. The Ocoee and the Chattooga are so different in the way that the vibe and the flow and the feel, just everything about those rivers is entirely, it's like night and day. It really is. So, well, Judy, it's been really great to hear you and see you. And maybe we'll have to connect with you in another time and have you come and talk about your life and your river experiences.
Well, I'm here to shine. I'm really proud of them, and what a commitment and trust in yourself, especially SK, because having never done it before, the trip that I went on, the first trip I went down, I went with professional guides, and they showed us all the tricks and trades, and and then the second one was a private trip. It was my own personal trip. I waited 14 years to get my permit, and my son-in-law had been 14 times. So, he was my guide. So the fact that you all went and had, it was so fresh to you. I'm duly impressed.
Well, that's good. Well, ladies, that should make you feel really good.
Everything Miss Judy has ever said to me has made me feel good. She's an angel.
That's fantastic. Are there any other questions from anyone out there in the Zoom world about this expedition or about this trip? Rick Kohler asks, are there any of the 3 ladies available to come talk to my Boy Scout troop camp in Madison, Mississippi? I have a girl and a boy troop that might benefit from talking about the dynamics of leadership. So SK, that might be a good connection if you know Rick Kohler.
I'm in Brandon, so not far away.
Well, there you go.
It's also, I'm not sure what the distance is or how old the kids are, but the Hiawassee River runs up here. If they're young kids, that's like a good place to go and talk to. If they're older, like the upper middle school range, I think what is the 12 and higher to go on the middle Ocoee. The Ocoee is a great place for them. We do take a lot of Boy Scout troops down, and there are all kinds of talks involved with that. So
yeah, Go ahead,
That
sir.
would be great. I actually know Kelly McInnes from Broadmeadow United Methodist Church when Kelly used to go to church there, and, along with me. So I'm familiar with Kelly, but I'm always looking for opportunities for the girl troop. The girl troop, both of the troops are anywhere from 11 years old to up to about 17, 18 years old. And so I'm always looking for opportunities and adventures to send them on.
Yeah.
So I may touch base with you, Sarah.
Yeah. Cool.
And I can definitely attest to the Hiawassee. That's where we take our university students to even learn whitewater before we go on the Koe with our little whitewater kayaks. We have some sit on top kayaks. So it's been really a great program. And Taylor's been on that river with us too. So it's a nice, easy class 1. Everything's pretty walkable.
Mhm.
It's a really good one to go on.
A couple of years ago, we did a summer camp up north of Chattanooga, and part of it was a high adventure thing through Whitewater Express.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
we did the Nantahala twice and Ocoee, and had a great time.
Yeah.
So, I'm always looking for stuff.
Yeah, if you bring them back this way, connect with either of the Kellys McGinnis, and they can set you up. We're off on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so if you ever need like help wrangling kids on a hike, you know where to find us.
Now you're at NOC.
NOC Ocoee, yeah.
Okay. All right. I wrote down all of y'all's names, including Dr. Davis, and so that I have things to contact with.
Awesome.
That's great. Thanks for coming up, Rick.
Thank you. I just spotted this online, and I said, I'm going to click on and listen in on this.
Glad you did. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there tonight? If not, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. I'm going to leave you with this tonight, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Let's see. We do have something coming here. Lewis and Clark versus Dunbar Hunter is an excellent example of a democratic versus authoritarian leadership. It's been interesting to hear these women talk about the importance of democratic leadership. Thank you, Richard. Richard, where are you coming in from today? He's like, I'm not telling y'all nothing else.
Conway, Arkansas.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Richard.
Hey, Richard. It's good to see you, man. Glad you could make it
Good
in.
to see you.
So one last question before you guys bail out. I just wanted to ask a quick superficial thing. First, Sarah Kelly, I don't think last time I saw you, we were backpacking through Louisiana somewhere, and I had blue jeans on. I don't know if you remember that.
I've never been backpacking in Louisiana.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Who am I thinking of then?
I don't go to Louisiana.
You didn't go on a DSU trip?
No, I've only been on the canoe trips.
I think you might be thinking of, I know who you're thinking of. You're thinking of, oh gosh, she just had a baby too. It's a trip that we took those kids down when it snowed in Arkansas. We took them all the way down to Louisiana, and you hooked up with us. And we hiked that trail that went through the cypress with like the elevated footbridges and everything with Christian. Yeah, her name's Amanda.
Yeah, not me.
And she loves dolphins. Wrong, but she does look very similar to you, SK. So I'm going to let Robbie slide on this one, and I'm not going to make fun of him in front of all these people, but she does look very similar to you, very similar. In fact, oh my God, here she is.
Oh, great. Better be cute.
This is the backpack trip, and that's her.
Oh, I've seen this picture.
Oh yeah, that does look like you.
Yeah. So Rob, we're going to let you go with that one, brother.
Not at all. Not at all. Anyway, my question is, I want to hear from each of you, what was your favorite part or moment of this trip, or your favorite rapid, and how did you run it, and why?
I have kind of two different answers, or I guess an answer to each part. My favorite moment, I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it's maybe coming into Tanner Camp. we had been in the shade all day long. I mean, just not even one ray of sunshine touched me, and it was devastating. And we came around this corner after hours of just kind of being cold and maybe drinking a little bit. And we came into the sunshine, and I just remember me and Emma and the other guy on our boat. I mean, just all, you would have thought that we had won the lottery or just had gone skydiving. The pure like adrenaline and joy that we had when we hit that sunshine is, I think, probably something I'm gonna remember for a long time, which is both incredibly corny and also it just still makes me happy. My favorite rapid though was definitely lava. If you guys get a chance to look at it on YouTube, I always recommend it. I mean, you're going to see lava at high water, which is pretty intimidating. But one of the things I like most about it was the guy that was in our boat. He had never rowed before, and I kind of talked him into doing it because I had done it before, and this was his only opportunity. And last second, he almost bailed, and me and Emma managed to talk him back into it. And it was like a perfect lava run, and it was the same adrenaline from before, just for an actual reason.
Brad.
Emma?
I think one of my favorite parts, was I only knew 4 people on the trip, so I got to meet 7 or 8 new, math is hard, 7 or 8 new people, which was awesome. And you get really, really close to those people sharing that experience for that long. So that was one of my favorite things. The sunshine was pretty incredible as well.
Cool. Wait, which rapid was your favorite?
Oh, my favorite rapid? Crystal was really intense, and that one was really fun. I was pretty scared of rowing, and Cheyenne and our other boatmate did a really, really good job, like pumping me up. And so I rowed, I think it was a 7. It was really, really fun, and it was exciting to like feel like I could do it. So
it was Serpentine or Sapphire?
Serpentine. Yeah, it was Serpentine. Yeah.
Serpentine.
Cool. It was all really good. I think one of my favorite days was the confluence of the Little Colorado River with the Colorado River, because there's a drastic change in color. You should look up pictures. It was like powder blue. You think you're at an amusement park. It doesn't look real. And they also had these archive boxes. They're ammo cans stowed away under some rocks. And you can open them up, and there's diaries going back to the 80s of people just saying, ran this rapid today, it was great. Or they're writing letters to people who are about to come down the river. There's love letters that say don't open till 2020 something. So that was really cool, kind of to look at the archives box. I found something from the year I was born that was cool. I left a note. We found a friend's note from before. So that was a really cool day. A magical place to take pictures. And then my favorite rapid, I really enjoyed Hermit Rapid. A lot of fun, big and splashy. And I really enjoyed rowing lava. That was a big deal for me. I feel like, let's just say before the rapid, I was so hyped and so much adrenaline that as soon as it was done, my friend Michael was in the boat, and I go, "Hey Michael, can you grab the oars for a sec?" And he grabbed them, and I went to the back of the boat and puked because there was just like so much adrenaline. I know that's a little TMI, but it was just crazy to see how much my heart was racing, how much adrenaline. And it was crazy. After that, it took about 10 minutes for everybody's heart rates to like go back to normal. Yeah, look those up. Look up some YouTube videos of that stuff. It's crazy.
And right after lava is Tequila Beach.
Yes, Tequila
An
Beach,
important stop.
a big celebration, and the next day is a slow start.
Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Cool.
Anyone else? Brad Snow asks, Grand Canyon's private boaters ass has a list of camps that are best for the winter sunshine.
Yeah, there are a lot of websites you can check out. Grand Canyon Private Boaters Association. Guidebook will tell you everything.
Oh, is that ask for association? Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Guidebook, it's waterproof, but this is like the generic one, and it's Tom Martin. And it's kind of funny. He's a little witty in there, but it tells you everything you need to know.
Awesome. Any last questions? I'm going to go ahead and share your screen, and I'm going to go ahead and share your video. SK, this is a video that I think you put together right when you got back with a lot of your photography and video and imagery and things of that nature. So,
yeah, it's a long one.
I just want to make sure that everybody notices how much beer was purchased and brought on this trip. Okay, anyways.
I'm also sitting on booze in that picture.
You want to make sure you're hydrated.
Important. Put in day.
Trying to get down, good Lord. Baby got him open all over town. Strictly bitch, don't play around. Cover much ground, gotta get it by the pound. Getting paid is a forte. Each and every day, true play away. Can't get him out of my mind. I think about him on the side. East side to the west side. Pushing fat rides is no surprise. He got tricks in the stash, stacking up the gas fast when it comes to the gas. I know he's at fresh. He's always gotta help me.
Oh, you lose somebody there.
It's back.
What's this? What wave is this?
This is House, and that's actually me in the front of the boat. You're about to watch me get slammed to the middle of the boat.
Okay, good. Let's watch that. Yes. Man, just stunning imagery.
Red ball pattern.
This guy's like,
Chloe. New Year's.
is that New Year's Eve?
Yeah, New Year's Eve. Diane's reading her Kindle.
Don't rat me out like that, SK.
Probably one of your most memorable New Year's Eve in your life.
Oh yeah. You get to do it again in 2022.
I like this thing.
you end up carrying wood because you wanted to have it for a fire in the back of your raft? Is that what you found and carried?
In the winter, it's legal to pick up driftwood from camp.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So this is a good representation of what it means to scout, where you would get out and of course get to a perspective where you can look at the rapids and then feel your way through. My assumption is that you ran this far right.
Yes, we did.
Tell us about the bridge.
It was kind of like, ew, civilization.
Yeah, the bridge is Angel
Bright Angel Trail.
Bright Angel Trail, right? There's a campground and everything over there. And did you stop?
We stopped at Phantom Ranch. It's a little place you can buy overpriced sweet tea and lemonade. People will actually ride mules down there and camp or hike down there. We stopped and it had a big stamp on it that said mailed by mule.
So
we stopped there for a second.
You did stop and see people.
We did, but it was weird. It was like, ew, land people. Yeah, it was really big
because of COVID. It wasn't very crowded.
Yeah.
But it still was surprisingly busy for the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
It's a good place to restock on ice typically.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy, what?
It's a good place to restock on ice typically.
Oh, sure.
Yes. Winter trips, you don't have to worry about ice, but summer, for sure. Yeah, Phantom Ranch.
Explain this thing. You saying it was like a stash?
So this was also a very dramatic day for our group. We had a big hike. But on the way back, maybe like a 1/10 of a mile from camp, I just saw one beer can sitting on a rock, and I was like, I'm going to go get that trash. Hike up there, and it's a whole cave of beers. It was high enough that it's not like a high water line. I don't know if people just were being trail fairies and leaving us happy little beers, but it was great. Brought some.
You had to have hiked to this to find them, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
how far down the river was it?
This was at
The Thunder River hike.
Yeah, racetrack.
And so what the commercial trips do, you see how much beer the typical trip takes, and the professional guides can gauge how much their guests are going to drink, and if they don't have a beer drinking trip, they will stash excess beers so that when they take a hike, they've got a beverage to cool them down.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we may have taken people's beers, but they were not in a box and they were thrown about. So I get with us picking
They were
up
free
trash.
game. Yeah, they didn't have anybody's name on them.
Yeah.
I think that Judy's partied before. I'm not sure, but I think that she may have.
You should meet her daughters.
Cave beer. I promise this video is a lot smoother in person
On YouTube.
on YouTube. It's not as blotchy.
Oh, is it not very smooth as it being transferred from Zoom?
Yeah, it's a little pixelated and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to tell everybody, we're about to the point where I was going to shut it up anyways, but I was going to tell the viewers, if you would share, if you were willing to share the video, you could put it in the snap or in the link, chat link, and people could certainly go watch it on their own. But it's almost 11 and a half minutes long, and but it is stunning, and it has good, really great detail of, you know, what you did and where you went.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to share that with them, by all means, you guys can go and watch that on your own. And like, I think it's important too to do what SK said, you know, to Google some of these places that they went, because they are fascinating. They do have really great imagery and show about. So are there any last questions or any last comments from you ladies about the lecture tonight?
I'm thankful for you for having us on. This has been a cool platform. Obviously, my last Canyon trip didn't have a press junket, so I'm glad to be a part of this one.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to get this video for y'all, so just bear with me.
Sure. Emma, any last words of wisdom to us?
Apply for permits.
Emma got a permit.
Yeah, I put in for my first time this past February as soon as we got off the water, and I won. So,
So you're the one that won.
yeah, so we're going again in December 2022.
Wow. So you're the one I need to contact. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. So I bet you're stoked.
Very stoked. I'm going to take all the notes from SK on how to be a good TL, and very, very thankful to be planning this with having done it before. It
Sure.
probably is a lot harder doing it blind.
Yeah.
So.
For sure.
Mhm.
Do you already have your trip pretty much figured out with your dynamic and people?
I think it's gonna kind of probably be similar to Sarah Kelly's experience, where you ask people and they're like, "Gosh, 2022 is so far from now."
Yeah.
But I have
fast.
I have a list of people that I, want to ask and like backups, and so.
And I'm going to be kind of rude here in a second, but what is it that you do that you'll be able to have time off?
I work for a brewery. I'm in marketing for a brewery, so.
And they will give you that time, or?
Yeah, they gave it to me this past time. I will probably be at a different brewery by the time I'm taking the next trip. But yeah, especially in December, it's a pretty slow month for marketing and events. So
Yeah. And I'm going to ask this question of you, and I'm only asking it so that some of the female viewers have an understanding of what we're talking about and what your range is. But how old are you?
I'm 20. I just turned 27.
Yeah.
So.
Cheyenne?
I'm 28.
SK?
And I'm 25.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting to see the bravery and the confidence and sort of the skill acquisition that you have, and you're not even 30. And I think this is really important for some of our younger viewers out there that are, female and young, that we're not talking that you're not 50 or you're not 60 or you're not 40. You certainly are, and you're certainly all career minded, and you're certainly all educated, with high levels of degrees. So it's just an interesting perspective, I think, sometimes for someone who's in college or someone who's outside of college to understand that this is a lifestyle and this is a chosen lifestyle, and it's something that you choose to do because you want not only the adventure and the camaraderie, but also that challenge, right? To see what you can do and what is attainable. And I think I really appreciated that one of your comments the most, Emma, tonight was about, for the first time in a long time, maybe you have felt like this is the first time you've really lived in the moment. And I think that's just really interesting and important for our young people about how important it is to live the days that you have in the moments that you have, because at some point, you won't have those. And I think it's a shame. There's always those, those questions that people ask when people are nearing death. And I'll always remember this one about a nurse who was, you know, on the side of a man's bed, and the only thing he wanted was more time. And I think that that's one of the more sadder, you know, messages, is that you only have a limited amount of time. It's how you spend it is really the most important. So I really thank all three of you with even giving some of your time tonight just to talk to some of our crowds here at Delta State and all the people that are all around from Arkansas, and everyone who checked in to sort of hear you. I think in some ways you are celebrities because you're doing things the way that you want to do them. You're doing the things that you feel are important, and you're doing it how you want to do it. And I think you're doing it unregrettably. And I think that's really something that we miss today, is people are just, you know, you get to do things that you want to do without that social norm and that social vibe. And so I'm certainly proud of you. I have a daughter who's 5.5 years old, and I hope that she grows up to be just like you three, you know, strong, independent, and adventurous. We certainly are encouraging her to be strong and adventurous and do things outdoorsy and nature. But, you know, I'm always concerned with that social construct grabbing a hold of her, and, you know, and reducing some of the time that she has, that she could be a strong woman, and, you know, doing, you know, softball or, you know, other sports. Well, we're just going to say no. I mean, it's just that simple. No, you can't play it. So, you know, I'm really proud of you all. It's really great to get to know a little bit of you just through virtual. I'm hoping that, you know, at some point we can get to see you face to face and in real life. That would be really great. If you ever get a chance to come to Idaho, there's some great rivers, the Selway, the Lochsa, the Snake, the Salmon. And so we have a little 14-foot raft platform and everything, and we've been doing some stuff on the lower Lochsa and the lower Clearwater River, but it's nice. So if you ever get a chance to come up there, there's always needing guides, you know, in the different parts of the rivers. So you're more than welcome to come and stay with us too. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you for coming. Thank you for visiting and sharing some of your wisdom and your insight, and certainly sharing your adventure. We really do appreciate it. I think that SK, if you get a chance, maybe you can email me that link to your video, and I can put it on the Delta State Outdoor Recreation page. And so if any of you that are out there that want to watch the rest of the video of their expedition, please visit our Delta State University or Delta State Outdoor Recreation. That's where we house all of our information. And I will also be posting this video as a YouTube link for anyone that wants to go back and watch it on our platform. So ladies, Judy, I really thank you so much for coming. All of you that came tonight and visited with us and listened to the ladies, we appreciate all of you. So girls, great to see you. Emma, I got money, so I'm ready to go if you just need somebody. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Awesome.